On the bright, shimmering planet of Zithra, a world of crystal cities and floating gardens, the royal palace rose like a crown over the capital city. Its towers gleamed in the sunlight, and streams of colored light reflected off its glass-like walls, creating rainbows across the ground. Within this palace lived Princess Lyra, daughter of King Thaler and Queen Selene. Admired across the galaxy for her intelligence, grace, and beauty, she was clever, confident, and proud, but she carried a secret vow in her heart, one that few knew about. Lyra had promised herself that she would never marry a human. Humans, she believed, were reckless, unsophisticated, and unpredictable. She had watched Earth's ambassadors visit her world many times, and she had seen their chaotic cities, their impulsive behavior, and their strange emotions. To her, humans were a puzzle that could never fit into her carefully ordered life. Any mate but a human, she whispered to herself as she paced the marble halls of her palace. Any mate but a human. The pressure to marry was always present. Zithra, despite its beauty and wealth, relied on alliances with other worlds to maintain peace and prosperity every year. Lyra's parents arranged gatherings, where nobles and royalty from distant planets were invited to meet her. These meetings were formal and glittering, with alien music, floating lanterns, and gowns that shimmered like liquid starlight. Yet each suitor she met only made her vows stronger. One by one, she met the proud Zerati warriors with glowing eyes, the Ithran diplomats with 6 arms and endless politeness, and the Varelian scholars who spoke in soft, calculated tones. Some tried to charm her, others tried to impress her with gifts or displays of skill, but none of them sparked her interest. The Zerati were too arrogant. The Ithrans were too cautious. The Varelians were too boring. Lyra smiled politely, bowed gracefully, and kept her heart firmly closed. Even her closest attendants noticed the tension in her. Mira, her personal aide and confidant, often tried to encourage her to relax. Princess, Mira said one evening as they walked along the palace gardens, perhaps you are too hard on yourself. Maybe you will find someone unexpected. Lyra shook her head, her long silver hair catching the sunlight. Mira, I have seen what humans are like. I will not make the mistake of trusting one to share my life. My vow is clear. Her green eyes were sharp and serious. Any mate but a human, despite her firm words. Lyra often found herself gazing at the stars late at night. From her balcony, she could see Earth, a small blue and green jewel in the black sky. Something about that tiny planet made her curious, though she would never admit it aloud. She wondered about the humans who lived there, their music, their art, their strange, emotional ways. But curiosity alone would never break her vow. Not yet. One morning, as the twin suns rose over Zithra, the palace received news of a new human delegation arriving. Lyra frowned. Humans visiting her world always caused excitement, and excitement was dangerous. It stirred feelings she had carefully suppressed. Her father, King Thaler, entered her chambers with a warm smile. My daughter, he said, you know why they are here. Earth wishes to strengthen its alliance with Zithra. Captain Ethan Ward will lead their delegation. He is said to be intelligent, brave, and respectful of other worlds. Lyra's lips pressed together. She had heard rumors of humans who were capable, but she refused to be impressed by stories. I will meet him politely, she replied, but I will not be swayed. My vow stands. The arrival ceremony was unlike anything Lyra had ever seen. Humans marched into the palace courtyard in uniforms that gleamed under Zithra's twin suns. Their leader, Captain Ethan Ward, stepped forward. Unlike many humans she had observed, he did not swagger or act overly confident. He stood straight, his eyes calm, scanning the palace surroundings with quiet curiosity. Lyra watched him from the balcony above, her heart beating just slightly faster than usual. There was something different about him, something grounded. He seemed to observe, to understand, rather than to rush and blindly like other humans she had met. The first meeting took place in the Grand Hall of Stars, a room so vast that it seemed endless, with floors that reflected the twin suns and walls adorned with murals of Zithra's history. Lyra descended the spiral staircase, her gown glimmering like liquid starlight. The humans bowed respectfully, and Ethan stepped forward. "Princess Lyra," he said, his voice steady and warm. "I am honored to meet you. I hope our worlds can work together for peace and prosperity." Lyra nodded politely. "Captain Ward, welcome to Zithra. I hope your stay is pleasant." Her tone was formal but polite, and her mind immediately began assessing him. Would he be like all the others, arrogant, reckless, naive? During the discussion, Ethan impressed her with his understanding of Zithran culture. He asked insightful questions, listened carefully to responses, and offered solutions to potential conflicts without dismissing Zithran traditions. Lyra felt a flicker of something. She had never allowed herself to feel interest. Mira noticed the change immediately. Later, she whispered to Lyra, "You were thinking too much about him. Remember your vow." Lyra frowned but could not deny her curiosity. Something about Ethan was different. He did not try to charm her. He did not flaunt human pride. He simply understood. Days passed, and the humans stayed in the palace, participating in ceremonies, visiting floating gardens, and observing Zithran technology. Lyra found herself seeking Ethan's company. More than she expected, she asked him questions about Earth, its history, its people, and his answers were thoughtful, honest, and sometimes even humorous. One evening, while walking through the palace's crystal gardens, Lyra asked, "Captain Ward, do you think humans are capable of great wisdom?" Ethan smiled. "I think wisdom is not about species. It's about learning, observing, and understanding. Any being can be wise if they try." Lyra paused, the words echoing in her mind. Could humans really be capable of wisdom? Could one human this human be someone she could trust? Her vow whispered in the back of her mind, any mate but a human. Yet, for the first time, she wondered if perhaps she had judged too quickly. Still, she could not allow herself to be swayed. Protocol, duty, and her own pride demanded she remain distant. She excused herself, leaving Ethan to admire the floating flowers that glowed in the twilight. As night fell over Zithra, the stars sparkled like diamonds, and Lyra returned to her balcony. She gazed at Earth again, small and distant. Somewhere on that blue and green planet lived people like Ethan Ward, capable of courage, kindness, and intelligence. But she would not allow herself to fall for a human. Not yet. Her vow remained her shield. Yet in her heart, a tiny seed of doubt had been planted. A seed that whispered quietly every time she thought of Captain Ethan Ward, a seed that would grow in ways she could never anticipate. The palace was silent, except for the soft hum of lights and the gentle rustle of floating leaves in the gardens below. Lyra's mind was not at peace. Her world was ordered, planned, imperfect, but humans, she realized, might just bring something unpredictable, something she had never experienced, something alive. And for the first time, the princess wondered if her vow might one day be challenged. The following morning, the palace of Zithra buzzed with activity. Servants floated along the hallways carrying trays of fragrant fruits and crystal goblets of glowing liquid. Courtiers and diplomats from distant worlds moved in careful patterns, their robes trailing like comet tails, each one eager to see the princess and the humans together. Princess Lyra observed it all from her balcony, her expression carefully composed. Captain Ethan Ward had spent the previous evening learning the customs of the Zithran palace, guided by Mira and a team of aides. He was intelligent, observant, and careful not to offend, yet he did not lose his own human honesty. That honesty, Lyra realized, was what made him stand apart from the other beings who visited Zithra. He was polite, but not afraid to speak his mind when necessary, and he never attempted to impress with exaggerated gestures or empty words. Lyra, curious despite herself, had agreed to join him for a tour of the palace's cultural archives, a vast library of knowledge that held the history of Zithra and its neighboring worlds. As she walked beside him, her flowing silver gown brushing the marble floor, she kept her distance, reminding herself constantly of her vow. "Princess Lyra," Ethan said, bowing his head slightly in respect, "your archives are incredible. I have never seen a collection of knowledge so carefully preserved and presented." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Knowledge alone is not enough," she said. It is wisdom that matters. And many beings may have knowledge without wisdom. Ethan nodded thoughtfully. Then perhaps we are here to share wisdom as well as knowledge. After all, learning from each other is part of diplomacy. Lyra paused, surprised. Few beings, alien or human, spoke with such insight. She had expected arrogance or naivety, yet Ethan's calm demeanor and sincere words intrigued her. They passed through corridors lined with glowing murals depicting Zithra's history, from its earliest settlements to the rise of the royal family. Ethan asked questions about each mural, showing genuine curiosity. He inquired not only about the events themselves, but about the choices made by leaders, the lessons learned, and the consequences of decisions. Lyra found herself explaining details she had never shared with outsiders before, and she noticed Ethan listening intently, absorbing everything without judgment. You asked thoughtful questions, Lyra said finally, stopping before a mural showing Zithra's first contact with another human delegation. Most humans simply assume they understand. You do not. Ethan smiled, a small, warm expression that contrasted with the formality of the palace. Understanding is important, princess. Without it, even the best intentions can lead to mistakes. I want to avoid mistakes. Lyra blinked. His words struck a chord in her mind. Here was a human who respected the complexity of other worlds, one who could act with caution, intelligence, and care. Yet she reminded herself firmly, he was still human, and her vow still stood as the day went on. Circumstances forced Lyra and Ethan to spend more time together. A dispute arose among visiting diplomats, threatening to disrupt the delicate alliance talks. Tensions flared as voices rose, gestures became threatening, and misunderstandings deepened. Lyra had watched similar situations erupt into chaos in the past, but this time Ethan remained calm. Princess Lyra, he said quietly, leaning close enough for her to hear, we must focus on the facts and the intentions behind them. Anger and pride will only make the situation worse. Lyra considered his words. He was right. Acting on emotion alone could destabilize not just the talks, but the entire alliance. Taking a deep breath, she raised her voice, addressing the diplomats with authority. Her tone was firm, commanding, but fair. She laid out the facts clearly, explained the consequences of rash actions, and offered solutions that honored each party's interests. Ethan stayed by her side, supporting her with calm explanations when needed, never overshadowing her authority. The combined effect was remarkable. Within moments, the room's tension eased, and the diplomats nodded in agreement, realizing the path forward. Lyra could not help but feel a spark of respect for the human who had stayed so composed. In the midst of chaos, no alien suitor she had met could have remained so calm, so logical, while still showing empathy. Later, in the palace gardens, Lyra walked beside Ethan as the floating flowers shimmered in the afternoon light. She studied him quietly, her mind analyzing and questioning. Captain Ward, she said, I must admit, you behave in ways I did not expect from humans. You are capable, patient, and observant. Most humans act before thinking. But you, she paused, searching for the right words. You act with thought and care. Ethan smiled softly. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, princess. I try to learn from my mistakes and from others. That is all. Lyra shook her head slightly, a small smile tugging at her lips. You make it difficult to dislike you. Ethan's eyes met hers, steady and sincere. I am glad to hear that, princess, though my purpose here is not to be liked. It is to serve my people and yours. Friendship, respect, and understanding are enough for me. Lyra nodded but felt an unexpected warmth in her chest. She had never encountered a human like him, one who combined humility, intelligence, and courage. Yet she quickly pushed the feeling aside. Her vow still stood, any mate but a human. Over the next few days, the human delegation participated in tours, demonstrations, and strategic discussions with Zithran leaders. Lyra observed Ethan carefully in each situation. When a security breach occurred in one of the research towers, Ethan coordinated a swift, intelligent response, protecting both humans and Zithrans without panicking. When negotiations became tense, He suggested compromises that satisfied all parties. And when the palace chefs accidentally served an alien delicacy that could have harmed humans, he handled the situation calmly and politely, ensuring everyone was safe. Each act, each decision, slowly chipped away at Lyra's assumptions about humans. She could not deny this human was exceptional, yet she reminded herself constantly of the vow she had made. Humans were unpredictable, emotional, and reckless. She could not allow herself to be swayed. Not yet. One evening, the palace held a grand banquet in honor of the human delegation. Lyra sat at the head of the table, the other dignitaries arranged on either side. Music filled the hall, a soft, melodic rhythm that seemed to flow through the crystal chandeliers and into every corner. The humans and aliens mingled, sharing stories, laughter, and food. Ethan approached Lyra with a gentle smile. "Princess, may I join you for a moment?" Lyra nodded, motioning to the seat beside her. She felt a flutter of curiosity, which she quickly tried to suppress. "I hope you do not find this strange," Ethan began, "but your people have remarkable traditions. I have seen generosity, wisdom, and courage everywhere I look, and I have learned much from you already." Lyra studied him, her expression neutral. "Humans tend to exaggerate, Captain. Words are often louder than actions." Ethan shook his head. "Actions speak, yes, but words also carry intent. And my intent is sincere. I respect your world, Princess. I respect you." Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest. She had heard such words from aliens before, but none had felt as honest or deliberate as his. She looked at him closely, noticing the calm confidence, the steady gaze, and the careful thought behind each word, and yet she could not allow herself to fall for him. Her duty, her vow, and her pride demanded that she remain distant. That night, as she returned to her chambers, Lyra pondered the events of the day. Captain Ethan Ward was unlike any human she had met. He was brave, clever, and respectful, a man capable of handling the complexities of her world. And despite her best efforts, she found herself thinking about him, wondering what it would be like if humans could be trusted, if they could be more than she had imagined. But she would not act on these thoughts, not yet. Her vow remained her shield, and she would protect it at all costs. Still, a small, quiet seed of doubt had begun to grow, whispering that perhaps humans, or at least this one human, might be different. Perhaps, just perhaps, her world was about to change in ways she could never predict. The stars outside her window twinkled, and the planet of Earth glimmered faintly in the distance. Somewhere out there, Captain Ethan Ward waited, unaware of the small but profound effect he was having on the Princess of Zithra. And for the first time, Lyra wondered if she might one day have to confront her vow and the feelings stirring within her heart. The days on Zithra passed quickly, yet Princess Lyra felt a growing weight on her mind. Captain Ethan Ward had remained polite, intelligent, and calm through every court gathering, negotiation, and palace tour. But more than that, he had begun to appear in unexpected places, always ready to offer help or insight without intruding. One morning, Lyra found herself in the palace observation wing, a high glass tower overlooking Zithra's floating gardens. She had come to review the latest planetary reports, but she was not alone. Ethan stood at a console, studying the holographic maps of Zithra and its surrounding regions. "Captain Ward," she said cautiously, "I did not expect to see you here." Ethan looked up with a small, respectful smile. "Princess, I thought it might be useful to review the orbital maps. There have been minor disturbances in the trade routes near the northern sector. It could affect our negotiations with neighboring planets." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "And you noticed this? On your own?" "I reviewed the data," he said simply. "It seemed important. I wanted to bring it to your attention before it escalated." Lyra felt a flicker of admiration. He was proactive, careful, and willing to take responsibility, qualities she rarely saw in humans. And yet, she reminded herself firmly, her vow remained intact. "Very well," she said, stepping closer to study the holographic map. "If these disturbances continue, we may need to send patrols. Can your people assist with logistics?" Ethan nodded. "Absolutely. And if needed, I can help coordinate Zithran and human teams. Efficiency increases with cooperation as they work together. Lyra noticed something subtle. Ethan never sought praise. He did not attempt to dominate the discussion, yet his observations were always insightful. Slowly, a sense of trust began to grow between them. She found herself valuing his advice, his calm logic, and even the quiet humor that occasionally slipped from his words. Later that day, Lyra was summoned to the palace gardens for a diplomatic meeting with representatives from the Varelian Confederation, a planet known for its cunning and strategic thinking. Tensions were high. Past negotiations had failed, and the Varelians were notorious for pushing their advantage. Ethan accompanied her, standing discreetly behind her as she entered the garden. The Varelian delegates bowed, their 6 arms folding elegantly. Yet their eyes were sharp and calculating. "Princess Lyra," one of the delegates began, "we have concerns about Zithra's trade policies. They seem restrictive. We worry that cooperation with humans may further complicate the situation." Lyra listened carefully, her mind analyzing every word, every gesture. She could see the subtle cues of diplomacy, the pressure points, the hidden intentions. Ethan, standing quietly beside her, offered no advice yet observed attentively. When the Varelians pressed further, Lyra responded with precision. Trade must benefit all parties, not only the strongest. Zithra seeks alliances based on mutual respect and understanding. Humans have proven capable partners in logistics and innovation. Cooperation does not mean domination, it means opportunity for all. The Varelians exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Ethan added calmly, "We are here to build trust, not exploit weaknesses. Your concerns are valid, and we are ready to address them together." The delegates paused, and after a tense moment, they nodded. The discussion moved forward, and Lyra realized that having Ethan by her side strengthened her position. His quiet support and reasoned statements gave her confidence she had never felt with previous alien allies. After the meeting, Lyra and Ethan walked through the palace gardens in silence, the floating flowers reflecting the colors of the setting suns. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself a brief moment of ease, enjoying the calm presence of the human who had slowly earned her respect. "You handle yourself well with the Varelians," she said quietly. Ethan glanced at her. "So do you, Princess." "I only hope my support was useful." "It was," she admitted, and though she quickly looked away, her heart felt a strange warmth. She had always believed humans were reckless, impulsive, and unpredictable. Yet Ethan was neither. He was steady, intelligent, and admirable. Over the following days, Lyra found herself seeking Ethan's company more often. They spent hours walking through the floating gardens, reviewing planetary data, or simply observing Zithra's skies. She discovered he was not only clever, but also patient, willing to listen, and genuinely curious about Zithran culture. One afternoon, Lyra challenged him with a test she often gave alien delegates, a puzzle involving Zithra's energy grids. Most beings became frustrated, dismissing the problem as impossible. Ethan, however, approached it methodically. He asked questions, made careful calculations, and proposed a solution that impressed even the palace engineers. "Remarkable," Lyra said, a note of admiration in her voice. "Most humans would have given up long ago." Ethan smiled faintly. "I believe persistence and careful observation can solve most problems. I am willing to try when others might fail." It was in moments like these that Lyra realized something unusual was happening. Her vow, her long-standing belief that no human could be worthy of her respect or affection, was slowly being challenged. Yet she refused to allow herself to think too deeply. She reminded herself, he was a diplomat, a guest, a human, and that was all. One evening, while the palace hosted a cultural festival, Lyra and Ethan found themselves alone on a balcony overlooking the city. Music filled the air, lanterns floated like stars, and distant fireworks painted the sky in brilliant colors. "You seem at home here," Ethan said quietly. Lyra smiled faintly. "I know my world. I understand its people, its customs, and its history. But you are learning quickly." Ethan's eyes met hers, calm and thoughtful. "I try." I want to understand, not only for diplomacy, but because this world matters. And because you matter. Lyra felt her breath catch. The words were unexpected, sincere, and oddly comforting. Yet she shook her head, suppressing the stirring feeling in her chest. She could not allow herself to fall for a human not yet. Captain Ward, she said lightly, your respect is noted. But remember my vow. You are human. That remains a barrier. Ethan nodded, his expression calm. I am aware, but sometimes barriers exist only to be tested. Not all walls are unbreakable. Lyra looked away, the wind lifting strands of her silver hair. She could not deny that she felt a growing admiration and something more for this human. His courage, patience, intelligence, and kindness were unlike anything she had seen. And yet, she clung to her vow, afraid of the unpredictable emotions stirring within her. The days continued, each filled with meetings, discussions, and quiet moments between Lyra and Ethan. They began to share stories of their lives, laughing softly at small misunderstandings and marveling at each other's worlds. Lyra learned of Ethan's upbringing on Earth, his dedication to his crew, and the risks he had taken to serve his people. Ethan learned of Lyra's childhood, her studies of the stars, and her responsibilities as a future queen. Through shared experiences, their friendship deepened. Trust grew between them, unspoken yet undeniable. They were allies, companions, and eventually, confidants. And though Lyra refused to admit it to herself, her heart had begun to recognize the value of this unusual human not as a mere diplomat, but as someone extraordinary, someone she could respect, admire, and perhaps even care for. But the princess's vow still whispered in her mind. Any mate but a human. She reminded herself constantly that feelings could not guide decisions. Yet as she looked at Ethan one evening, observing him calmly strategizing for a potential trade negotiation, she could not deny the truth. The human had changed her perception, and she was beginning to see a future she had never imagined. The bond between them was no longer just diplomatic. It had grown into friendship, trust, and subtle admiration. And while Lyra continued to resist the growing feelings in her heart, she could sense that the days ahead would test her resolve and her vow in ways she could never foresee. Outside, Zithra's twin suns set, casting long shadows across the floating gardens. The stars blinked into existence, and somewhere beyond the atmosphere, Earth gleamed faintly, a reminder of the human who had quietly begun to alter the life of the Princess of Zithra. And for the first time, Lyra wondered whether her vow could truly hold against the growing connection. She felt toward Ethan Ward a connection she could no longer ignore. The morning air on Zithra was unusually tense. Princess Lyra stood in the royal command chamber, a circular room filled with holographic screens projecting maps, communications, and intelligence reports. The twin suns cast pale light through the crystalline walls, making the floating gardens below glimmer like emerald rivers. Today was unlike any day she had faced. The palace buzzed with activity, and a sense of urgency filled the air. Your Highness, Mira said, her voice tight with concern, we have reports from the northern sector. A group of hostile aliens, the Corvani raiders, have begun raiding trade routes. If they advance further, it could destabilize the region and threaten our alliances. Lyra's green eyes narrowed. Gather the council. We must act quickly. Any delay will give them the advantage. Ethan Ward stepped beside her, calm but focused. Princess Lyra, if I may. The Corvani are known for exploiting weaknesses in communications and strategy. Their attacks are fast, but predictable if we plan carefully. I can help coordinate both human and Zithran defenses. Lyra studied him for a moment. He had proven himself reliable in diplomacy and observation, but could he handle a real crisis? She decided there was only one way to find out. Very well, Captain Ward, she said, her voice firm. You will work with our commanders. We will defend Zithra together. Within the hour, the royal command chamber transformed into a hub of activity. Holographic maps displayed trade routes, patrol fleets, and potential raider positions. Zithran officers spoke quickly, debating strategy, while Ethan quietly studied the data, offering concise recommendations. Your patrols are spread too thin along the northern corridors, Ethan observed. If we reposition a few ships here and here, he pointed on the hologram, we can create a defensive buffer without weakening the rest of the network. The Corvani rely on surprise. This will reduce their advantage. A senior Zithran commander frowned. That is risky. If we move too many ships, the south may be vulnerable. Ethan's expression remained calm. I have calculated the risk. The Corvani are unlikely to attack the south immediately. Their priority is the wealthiest trade routes. By reinforcing the north, we protect the most critical assets and give ourselves time to respond if they adapt. Lyra's heart swelled with admiration. Not only was he right, but he had thought several steps ahead, anticipating the enemy's moves. She gave a subtle nod, signaling approval. The first attack came at dusk. Scouts reported raider ships approaching fast, their weapons glowing ominously in the twilight. The palace's defense systems activated, shields rising around critical trade hubs. Lyra, standing at the center of the command room, watched the holograms flicker as ships moved into formation. Ethan worked alongside her, coordinating responses with precise instructions. Deploy the forward scouts here, he said, and hold reserve units in this sector. Do not engage until they cross the buffer line. Lyra realized something important. She was not merely observing him anymore, she trusted him. His judgment was sound, his decisions measured, and his courage evident even in the face of danger. As the Corvani raiders entered the northern sector, the battle began. Energy beams streaked across the sky, and ships maneuvered in patterns that could only be described as deadly dance. Lyra felt a surge of adrenaline. She had led diplomatic negotiations, managed her court, and observed countless simulations, but this was real. Lives were at stake. Ethan remained calm throughout, issuing commands, adjusting strategies, and inspiring confidence in both humans and Zithrans. When one raider ship broke formation and threatened a critical trade hub, Ethan personally coordinated a defensive response that neutralized the threat. Lyra watched, impressed by his courage and quick thinking. The battle raged for hours, but slowly. The combined forces of Zithra and Earth gained the upper hand. Ethan's strategies, combined with Lyra's leadership and the skill of the Zithran commanders, turned the tide. By nightfall, the raiders were in retreat, and the trade routes were secure. In the aftermath, Lyra walked among the palace gardens, the stars twinkling above, reflecting on the day's events. Her mind was racing not with fear or frustration, but with admiration for the human who had proven himself under fire. Ethan approached, his uniform slightly scuffed from hours of coordination, but his posture calm and steady. Princess Lyra, he said softly, the immediate threat is neutralized. We will need to reinforce patrols and monitor the northern corridor for at least another cycle. But the worst is over. Lyra looked at him, noticing how his presence had been steady, unwavering, and reliable. She had judged humans harshly for years, believing them reckless and unfit to share her world. Yet here was a man who had displayed courage, intelligence, and loyalty in the face of real danger. You were remarkable, she admitted, her voice quiet but sincere. I've underestimated humans. And you? Ethan smiled faintly. I only did what was necessary. Your leadership made it possible, Princess. I could not have acted without your guidance. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest, a sensation she had not allowed herself to feel in years. She had been so sure of her vow, so certain that no human could ever earn her trust or admiration. Yet now, standing beside Ethan, she realized how wrong she had been. Over the next several days, Lyra and Ethan worked closely to strengthen defenses and rebuild damaged trade networks. Their collaboration drew the attention of other Zithran nobles and human diplomats, who marveled at their efficiency and mutual respect. Lyra noticed that with Ethan, she did not feel the same pressure to maintain a flawless void. She could rely on him, and he could rely on her. One afternoon, while reviewing reports in the observation wing, Lyra spoke quietly. Captain Ward, you have done more than I expected. Your insight, courage, and calmness, they have changed my perspective. Perhaps humans are capable of more than I believed. Ethan looked at her, his gaze steady. Humans are imperfect, yes, but we try. And sometimes We can surprise even ourselves." Lyra smiled faintly. "You have surprised me." As the days passed, the palace began to celebrate their success. Trade routes were secure, and the raiders had retreated far from Zithran's space. Lyra attended a small celebration with Ethan, observing him interact with her people. He was humble, kind, and respectful, even in casual conversation. He impressed everyone with his intelligence and honesty. Later that evening, Lyra walked alone along the floating gardens. She looked up at the stars, the distant glimmer of Earth reminding her of the human who had stood by her side. Her mind replayed the events of the past days, the crisis, the strategies, and the courage displayed by Ethan. She realized that her heart had been slowly changing. The princess's vow any mate but a human had been tested more than ever before. She had seen humans in action, and one in particular had proven himself in ways she could not ignore. Courage, intelligence, loyalty, and calmness under pressure had begun to chip away at the walls she had built around herself. Yet Lyra reminded herself to remain cautious. Feelings were unpredictable. Duty was paramount. She could admire, respect, and trust Ethan without breaking her vow. Could she not? The night deepened, and Lyra returned to her chambers, thoughts swirling. The seeds of change had been planted, and the crisis had revealed more than just vulnerabilities in trade routes. It had revealed a new possibility for her heart, one that she could not yet fully name. Somewhere across the stars, Earth waited, and so did Captain Ethan Ward, unbeknownst to him. He had done more than protect Zithra and his people. He had begun to change the princess, showing her that courage, loyalty, and wisdom could cross any boundary, even that of a long-held vow. And for the first time, Princess Lyra wondered if she could truly hold her promise against the growing admiration and feelings stirring within her heart. The crisis was over, but the real test of her heart and choices had only just begun. The morning after the Corvani raiders were driven away, Princess Lyra walked through the floating gardens of the palace, her mind heavy with thought. The crisis had tested her leadership, her courage, and her judgment, but it had also tested something more personal, her long-held vow, that no human could ever share her heart. Captain Ethan Ward had proven himself brave, wise, and loyal. He had faced danger without fear, made decisions with care, and earned the trust of Zithrans in ways no alien suitor ever had. Lyra paused by a glowing fountain, watching the water spiral in light. For years, she had believed she could never rely on a human, but Ethan had changed everything. He had not only saved trade routes and lives, but had also shown her that humans, when guided by heart and intellect, could rise to greatness. Her thoughts were interrupted by a familiar voice. "Princess Lyra," Ethan said softly, approaching her with a small, respectful bow. "May I join you?" Lyra nodded, stepping aside to allow him to stand beside her. The soft hum of floating lanterns surrounded them, and the light of the twin suns reflected in Ethan's calm eyes. "The people are safe," he began, his voice steady. "The northern trade routes are secure, and the Corvani will think twice before returning. Zithra is stronger today." Lyra smiled faintly. "Thanks to your help, Captain Ward. Your courage and intelligence have changed more than the outcome of a battle. They have changed my perception of humans, of allies, and perhaps of myself." Ethan looked at her, curiosity and quiet hope in his gaze. "You mean?" Lyra hesitated. She had spent so many years building walls around her heart, protecting herself from what she believed humans could never offer. Yet now, standing next to him, she felt the walls trembling. "I mean, you have shown me that humans can be capable of loyalty, wisdom, and bravery, and that perhaps I have been too rigid in my vow." Ethan's smile was gentle. "Princess, I never sought to change you. I only acted as I thought was right. If my actions have shown you something new, then I am honored." Lyra studied him carefully, seeing not only the man who had led humans in diplomacy and battle, but the person who had earned her trust and respect. Slowly, she realized her feelings were more than admiration. They were affection, warmth, and perhaps even love. Her vow, so long a shield, no longer seemed unbreakable. Days passed as the palace began returning to its usual rhythm. Diplomatic talks with the Varelians and other neighboring planets resumed smoothly. strengthened by the successful defense against the Corvani. Humans and Zithrans worked together more closely than ever, coordinating patrols, sharing knowledge, and exchanging technology. Lyra observed Ethan as he collaborated with her advisors, his calm confidence inspiring everyone around him. It became clear that something deeper than friendship was growing between them. Lyra found herself seeking his advice, enjoying his company, and noticing the little details, the way he listened, the small smiles he offered, the thoughtful questions he asked about Zithra's culture. And every time she reminded herself of her vow, she felt it soften, almost as if it were no longer the rule she had once believed it to be. One evening, Lyra requested a private meeting with Ethan in the palace's observation wing. The stars shimmered through the glass walls, and the city below glowed like a sea of liquid light. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "Captain Ward," she began, her voice soft but steady, "the events of the past days have shown me something important. You have proven that humans can rise above expectations. You have proven that courage, loyalty, and wisdom are not limited to any one species. And you have proven that my vow may not hold against what I feel." Ethan's expression was calm, yet a flicker of hope shone in his eyes. "Princess Lyra, are you saying?" Lyra met his gaze, her green eyes steady. "Yes, I have feelings for you, Captain Ward, strong ones. And I want to explore what they might mean, if you are willing." Ethan's lips curved into a warm smile. "Princess Lyra, I have admired you since the moment we met. Your intelligence, courage, and leadership inspire me. I would be honored to explore this with you." Relief and joy swept through Lyra. For years, she had clung to a vow that had once seemed absolute. Yet now, through trust, respect, and shared experience, she found herself ready to embrace the possibility of loved one that crossed worlds and species. Their bond became stronger in the following weeks. They continued their work in diplomacy, blending human innovation and Zithran tradition to strengthen the alliance between their worlds. Lyra and Ethan became not only partners in leadership, but partners in life, learning from each other, supporting one another, and finding joy in shared experiences. The palace began to recognize their closeness. Courtiers whispered about the unusual friendship blossoming into something deeper. Yet Lyra and Ethan paid little mind to rumors. Their focus was on the prosperity of Zithra and the growing bond between humans and Zithrans. One afternoon, Lyra took Ethan to the Sky Gardens, a serene place where rare floating flowers glowed in soft hues. She paused beside a fountain, looking at him with a mixture of admiration and affection. "Do you realize," she said softly, "that you have changed not only my perception of humans, but also the way I see myself?" Ethan smiled. "I think we changed each other in many ways, Princess. That is what companionship and perhaps love is about." Lyra felt her heart lift. She had learned that courage was not only about facing danger, but about facing one's own feelings and fears. Loyalty was not only about duty, but about trust. And love, true love, was about respect, understanding, and the willingness to stand together across differences. As the twin suns set over Zithra, Lyra and Ethan stood side by side, looking out at the horizon. The stars twinkled in the sky, and Earth shone faintly, a reminder of the human who had crossed the galaxy and changed the heart of a princess. "Captain Ward," Lyra said, turning to him, "I never thought I could feel this way about a human. Yet here I am, ready to face the future with you." Ethan took her hand gently, his touch warm and steady. "Princess Lyra, together we can face anything, our worlds, our duties, and whatever challenges lie ahead." Lyra smiled, her heart full. The past years of rigid vows, caution, and fear seemed distant now. She had learned that the walls we build can protect us, but sometimes they also prevent us from experiencing the greatest joys life can offer. And now, she had chosen trust, courage, and love over fear. The palace lights shimmered in the distance as they walked together through the gardens. Side by side, humans and Zithrans alike watched them with quiet admiration, witnessing the bond between two worlds, forged through courage, wisdom, and respect. Lyra realized that her story, her life as a princess, her responsibilities, and her heart was no longer confined by old rules or limitations. She had discovered that even the strongest vows could be redefined when met with courage, intelligence, and a heart willing to see the truth. In the weeks that followed, plans were made to strengthen the alliance between Zithra and Earth. Trade, technology, and culture flourished. Lyra and Ethan worked side by side, showing their people that unity across species was possible. And wherever they went, their partnership became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even worlds apart, beings could rise above fear and prejudice to build something greater together. One evening, as they stood on the observation balcony, Lyra whispered, "We have a long journey ahead, Captain, but I am ready with you." Ethan smiled, his hand holding hers firmly. "And I am ready, Princess." Together, the stars above twinkled like distant promises. And for the first time in her life, Lyra felt the true power of trust, friendship, and love. She had faced challenges, seen courage in action, and opened her heart. And as she looked at the human who had changed her forever, she knew that their future was bright not just for them, but for both their worlds. The twin suns set once more over Zithra, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and gold. Princess Lyra, once determined to avoid any human mate, had discovered that love, trust, and unity could bridge worlds. And with Captain Ethan Ward by her side, she was ready to embrace a new future, one of hope, partnership, and endless possibilities. And so, the princess who had sworn any mate but a human found that the one who changed her mind was the human who had earned her respect, trust, and ultimately her heart.